So today we're going to talk about perfectionism. Perfectionism. Does my hair look okay? Hi, my name is Erica and I'm a recovering perfectionist. Today we're going to talk about the most self-destructive and addictive belief system, perfectionism. Research shows that not only does perfectionism inhibit success, but it is also a pathway to anxiety, depression, addiction, and just general life stagnation. If we have a fear of failing, making mistakes, or disappointing others, then we're more likely to miss opportunities and overlook our dreams. And boy, do I know this from personal experience. I used to think that if I looked perfect, acted perfect, and lived perfectly, then that would allow me to avoid, or at least drastically minimize, the chances of me experiencing the deeply painful emotions of shame, judgment, and blame. I was so afraid of these feelings, yet these feelings are a reality of the earthling experience. The truth is, me trying to avoid experiencing the feelings of shame, judgment, and blame by engaging in perfectionism actually increased the odds of me experiencing these deeply painful emotions. Here's where the addictive part comes in. Because when I invariably do experience the feelings of shame, judgment, and blame, I would often believe it was because I was not good enough. I needed to do better. This is faulty logic. But when I was in this frame of thinking, I couldn't see this faulty logic. So instead of questioning the logic of perfectionism, I would spin my wheels harder, becoming even more engrossed in my quest to live, look, be, and do everything just right. Perfectionism is self-destructive because it's unattainable. Part of the human experience for all earthlings is that we make mistakes, we mess up. So if perfectionism is unattainable, but I am trying to obtain it, then I am invariably trying to control your perception of me, which is also a game I'm going to lose because I can't control what you think of me. All of this would eventually lead me on a self-blame and shame spiral. And as Brene Brown states, shame is the birthplace of perfectionism. Shame and perfectionism are very much connected. I had so much shame inside of me that perfectionism was my remedy to rectify this painful emotion. So I had to get deliberate with my response to shame. Let me give you the perfect example. So my husband and I were getting ready to temporarily move across country. Moving across country is a lot of work, so I was very busy at this time. I had a very busy day on this particular day with a very short break to make dinner, and then I had an evening class. I was cooking, so I was in a rush. I was cooking a side dish on the stove, and because I was so exhausted from the day, I decided to lay down for 30 minutes. My side dish needed to simmer for at least that amount of time. Problem was, I didn't have it on simmer. I left it on a really high temperature, really high setting, and I burned the side dish so bad that I had to throw out the pot, and the house smelled terrible for like 2 days. For those that know me personally, I'm a huge cook. And I'm quite good at it. I rarely burn things. I'm pretty passionate about cooking, so this doesn't happen very often. Well, my husband came home shortly after and made a comment about the smell in the house. The comment wasn't mean or malicious. Here's the thing: it doesn't need to be in order to trigger a shame response. But the second he made that comment about the smell, I immediately felt the physical symptoms of a shame cycle coming on. I felt a wave of inferiority wash over me. My breath became shortened. I feel hot in the back of my neck. I definitely get kind of tears that well up in my eyes. Not only was I feeling like a complete failure over burning a side dish and shame over having the audacity to lay down in the afternoon, all of which is faulty thinking, but I also started thinking about all the things he does wrong, preparing myself for a counterattack. I was entering into a shame cycle fueled by perfectionism, but I was aware of it. To overcome perfectionism, I had to learn how to acknowledge my vulnerabilities rather than being horrified by them. I first started by observing other people. My husband's a really good example of this. I would almost watch him make a mistake and accept this mistake as just part of him being human. He would also acknowledge his vulnerabilities rather than trying to hide them from people. He understood that Everyone has vulnerabilities, and I would watch that. So what are your vulnerabilities, and can you learn to acknowledge them? Because me accepting that I am human, who sometimes burns things on accident, among other things, rather than being completely horrified by the possibility that I could ever do that, gives me two very different somatic responses to the exact same situation. To overcome perfectionism, I also had to build better shame resilience. This is super important. In order to do this, I needed to get better at understanding the signs so I would know when I was getting ready to enter into a shame cycle. When I enter into a shame cycle, as I notated earlier, a wave of inferiority washes over me. My breath gets really short. I tend to swell up with tears. My neck gets hot. But I'm aware of these symptoms, which makes it so much easier for me to catch myself when entering into a shame cycle, as we saw in the example of me burning the side dish. Are you able to identify the somatic responses you have when entering into a shame cycle? Cultivating this awareness is super important. It's invaluable. I also had to pay attention to who I became when entering a shame cycle. Knowing this will give you so much power. I personally want to attack the person I see as a threat and then isolate to protect myself. I tend to bounce back and forth between the mean and nasties and the cry and hides. This is how I want to protect myself, but it just causes more shame. If I attacked my husband for making the comment about the burnt smell, I wouldn't have felt better. I would have been mean and nasty, and then I would have isolated and cried. This would have exasperated my shame because I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to attack you. So I had to ask myself a very important question. What is the most courageous thing I could do for myself when I was feeling this way? Who can I call to work through the mean and nasties or the crying hides? Shame kind of loses its power when we have a safe person to talk it over with, at least in my experience. So the question is, who do you become when you enter a shame cycle, and how do you protect yourself? Answer that question and see if there is something more courageous you can do instead, which brings us to our last point, self-compassion. Self-compassion is really hard at first. It is something that was really hard for me at first. It is something that you are going to have to practice. It is something that I still constantly have to practice. But if we want to counter shame, then self-compassion is essential. It just is. When I burned that side dish and felt that wave of shame come over me, self-compassion became my saving grace. Now, I want to be clear. Perfectionism is a spectrum from my perspective. I don't think we are either a perfectionist or we are not a perfectionist. It moves along a spectrum. And for me, some situations may trigger it more than others. Apparently, burning a side dish is one of them. Now, I want to state very clearly that I do not do any of these things perfectly. Remember, I'm a recovering perfectionist. It is something that I work on constantly, and days go on, I get better, but I'm not perfect. In fact, I'm embarrassingly human. And today, I'm good with that. Have a good week.